in our country. The House passed, as you know, the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, a bipartisan, bicameral bill to combat the rising epidemic of AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander hate crimes. Those attacks, yesterday the report was that in the past year, 6,600 attacks reported. We know there are many more, but reported attacks. As someone blessed to be from a district, as I am, with a large AAPI population and community, this is something that I see regularly, and am therefore very grateful to Congresswoman Grace Meng and Senator Mazie Hirono for their leadership. There are other leads in the House and Senate on it as well. I thank them all. Today, we go to the White House for a signing ceremony for that legislation, a signal to our nation of the high priority that President Biden has placed on, and the Congress have placed on addressing this issue. As you know, right within a day of his inauguration, the president brought this up, tasked the Justice Department to make a further record of this, address the issue as well, even before we had an attorney general. And now we have the legislation. When he talked about COVID and made his address to the nation, he included the COVID-19 hate crimes that we have seen. So, again, yesterday the bipartisan support was passed for this legislation. The Senate, the House, the signing today. So yesterday, again, that was on justice and security. Yesterday, as you know, proudly the House of Representatives, strong bipartisan way, passed a bipartisan legislation for an independent bipartisan 9/11 type commission to establish the truth of what happened on January 6th. It's important to note that this legislation was done in a record time. You probably don't know, but the legislation for 9/11 Commission, now 9/11/2001, was signed into law November 27th, 2002, more than 14 months later. We're very pleased that this has a much accelerated pace to it, and we're eager to get it to the president's desk. Again, it was endorsed by Chairs Kane and Hamilton, the co-chairs of the 9/11 Commission. In the interest of bipartisanship, we've yielded on many requests, but we would not yield on its purpose to defend our democracy. I just wanted to just read from General Kane, in case you didn't see. We very strongly urge House members to support H.R. 3233, the bipartisan National Commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the Capitol. It goes on to say what it would establish. As chairman and vice chairman of the 9/11 Commission, unity of purpose was key to the effectiveness of the group. We put country above party without bias, the events before, during, and after the attack. Today, democracy faces a new threat. The January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol was one of the darkest days in the history of our country. Americans deserve an objective and accurate account of what happened. As we did in the wake of September 11, it's time to set aside partisan politics, come together as Americans in common pursuit of truth and justice. So we're very pleased at the number of Republicans who voted for truth and justice. Today, the House continues our work to protect the Capitol with an emergency supplemental funding bill. It's based on the facts and findings of General Honore's report. General Honore had a task force of national security and law enforcement experts who prioritized and sequenced how we should proceed. It also reflects the Inspector General's reports to the Appropriation and House Administrations Committee. The funding will respond to the cost to harden the Capitol, to repair the Capitol, and then to harden against future attacks. And it also honors the sacrifice of the Capitol Police officers, including the Howie Liebengood Center for Wellness, Harry Liebengood took his life following 9/11. His family has been very concerned about the counseling necessary for members faced with such tragedy. And it's beyond shameful and beyond reason that any member would not understand why we need this. And I want to make a special shout out for the custodial staff of the Capitol. This legislation addresses the sacrifices that they have made, the needs that they have to go forward. And I'm pleased that the Appropriations Committee found the appropriate route to be helpful to them. Okay, and all this is going on, of course, we're getting ready for the American Jobs and Family Plans to build back better. Our chairs have been working, hopefully as much as possible in a bipartisan way, to see where we can find common ground from the standpoint of the House committees. As you know, the president has been in negotiations with the Senate. Republicans will see where that takes us. But we do have a responsibility and an opportunity to build back better with the not only what we want to do for roads and bridges and mass transit and high-speed rail, but broadband into rural America and into urban deserts in that regard, with water projects so necessary. As a person in the West where water is can be a fighting word, it is certainly a vital word and source. And so we have, for the whole country, need to not only store, distribute better, recycle, but get the lead out for the health of our children. And in order to build back better, we want to do so with much more larger participation of previously underrepresented communities, and starting with moms, dads too, who may need health care, child care or elder care or care for persons with a disability and their families. When people talk about people not taking jobs now, they have to recognize if kids cannot be in school and children and families cannot afford health care and it's not readily available, how can people go to work? So again, if we're going to build back better, we have to think in a new way about what infrastructure is, and that workforce development, child care, family and medical leave are all part of that initiative. And so we're excited about what that means, and we're so happy about the child tax credit and universal pre-K and the initiatives that the president sees as valuable to building our kids. It's pretty exciting when you think of the opportunity that is there, how we grow our economy with everyone participate in a fuller way, and the benefits of our, hopefully, prosperity as we grow the economy in a way that creates good-paying jobs, preserves the planet, involves many more people. Any questions?
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
On the commission vote.
But first, yesterday.
Well,
what is this?
You talk again.
You were loudest.
What did yesterday's vote tell you about the state of the Republican Party?
You know, I'm not here to analyze the Republican Party. All I say is to my Republican friends, and I do have them, take back your party. This is the grand old party, the party that's done so much for our country. And quite frankly, many Republicans have courageously withstood the, shall we say, assault on our democracy that has gone forth. When you think of the Republicans and the courage that they've had in the electoral system in our country, and election decisions that have been made to support the fact that the election was legitimate. Many Republicans were the ones who came forward. So I think that there's some courage that needs to be recognized in the party, certainly in our body, Liz Cheney and others. But it's not for me to analyze them, except to say, as one who has served with Republicans for a long time in the Congress, this is a different, I would say breed of cat, but I love our kitten, Daisy, so I'm not going to say breed of cat. I don't want to do that to cat. My granddaughter's Bella's Daisy. But it is interesting to see 35 members coming forth. I'm very proud of them. And it was a recognition that this was a bipartisan product, negotiated in good faith that all of a sudden they wanted to say, well, if it isn't Black Lives Matter or something like that, taking their eye off the ball, January 6th. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We saw the guidance.
Yes, good morning.
We saw the guidance yesterday from the Capitol attending physician. We saw Drew's statement as
Yes.
well, clarifying some of that. How does that pertain, though, and I've asked you about this before, people keep saying, well, when can Congress get back to normal and the continuation of hybrid hearings and remote voting? So, and you just re-upped the remote voting until July. I understand the issue with the floor and what Dr. Monahan said. But with that issue, why shouldn't some of those things, like the remote hearing, get back to normal?
Well, what the attending physician, and that's the guidance we have to go by, said is unless people are vaccinated, we have to continue to wear masks in our meetings and on the floor. And so that's what we are doing. It is unfortunate that a large number of people in the Congress have refused to be vaccinated, or I don't know what it is. I don't know, refused or have been vaccinated and don't want to admit. I don't know what that is because I shouldn't know. It's their personal business. But until they, as the doctor said, until they are vaccinated, we cannot have meetings without masks.
But he was specific to the House floor, talking about that being a unique place where everyone comes to meet.
Right.
What about committees where you might
Wouldn't
have
it be the
20,
same
30,
thing?
40 people?
Yeah. Well, in the meetings, if you're not vaccinated, the other people have to wear a mask. And we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that this new CDC guidance will encourage people to be vaccinated. We want to get through this as soon as possible. Does anybody feel like wearing a mask? So, no, we all want to get through this, and we want to get back to much of the containment of visitors to the Capitol relates to COVID, not necessarily to what happened January 6th only. I mean, we have to protect people and have safety and security, but many of the prohibitions of visits sprang well before January, came forth before January 6th. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. Just to follow up on that, the president has talked about July 4th as being maybe this time when the country can begin to sort of gather more and get back to normal. Do you see any openings for other aspects of the Capitol to visitors? And again, knowing that so many people have not been vaccinated, do you just keep waiting for them, or is there an alternative?
We have to wait for them to be vaccinated because they are selfishly a endangerment to other people, including staff people here. So while we're all hopeful, and I join the president in being hopeful, that we can reach a place where it is safe for people to be. What is this, the honor system? The honor system as to whether somebody has been vaccinated? Do you want them breathing in your face on the strength of their honor? So let's just see. Let's just see. I mean, again, this is about science and governance. And science and governance, we have a responsibility to make sure that the House of the Representatives chamber is not a petri dish because of the selfishness of some not to be vaccinated, or to insist, or to wear a mask, because it requires us to wear a mask. I mean, we could come to a place where we say, if you don't want to wear a mask and you don't want to, if you're not vaccinated, don't even come to the floor. We have facilities up above in the gallery where people can come to vote. We don't want to deter anybody's ability to exercise their constitutional duties. We have that responsibility as well. So we're trying to balance everybody being able to exercise his or her constitutional duties, as well as protect the staff, and the other members. Now, as I know a lot of things as Speaker of the House, I know a lot of things, and I know a lot about people's predispositions and the rest because they share them with me, and I have to make judgments based on what the vulnerability are of our members as well. But it's not a, shall we say, subjective decision. A attending physician has said until everybody's vaccinated, we wear masks. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Speaker, back to the commission.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that that is your strong preference for a bipartisan
Yes.
9/11 type commission. Things are not looking great for that passing in the Senate.
No.
There's a lot of opposition.
No.
Are you committed to, if that bill's in the Senate, are you committed to a select committee? How would that work?
We're taking this one step at a time. What we've said we want is a bipartisan commission. I don't want to weaken that position. Everybody knows what my options are. They are no secret. But the preference, not only preference, overwhelming preference is for bipartisanship. And I don't think that what we've heard from the Senate is so bad compared to what we'd usually hear from the Senate. And I'm very pleased with the statement made by the majority leader on this subject. And now some of the senators, Republican senators, are saying, well, if there's Republicans can hire staff, I would be okay with that. Of course they can hire staff. That's never even been a question. So we like that threshold that they want the committee to cross.
Madam Speaker, I just want to follow up on that question. So it doesn't appear there's going to be an investigation no matter what happens, right? That's basically what you're saying is it's this and something else, but this Congress is not going to go by without some sort of large-scale probe into January 6th.
Well, let's go back to 9/11. When 9/11, you saw it took 14 and a half months to get this signed by the president. Did you know that?
I didn't know.
Yeah, isn't that surprising to you?
Yeah.
You would have thought just like that. But there was major opposition to a 9/11 commission. I know that because I had the first bill, and I lost on the floor. We were in the minority at the time. And then Tim Romer had the amendment to the intelligence bill with the help of the families, and that's how we got a bill passed and then to the president's desk. But it took time. This has been really on an accelerated pace, even though, why don't we have it? Well, it's in the works, and it takes time to negotiate. In the meantime, though, in 2001 and 2, leading up to that, we had a joint committee in the House and Senate, bipartisan committee, of which I was a co-chair as the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. Bob Graham was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, so he and Shelby Pelosi in the House. And we had months of hearings and the rest, and the work that was produced by that committee was very valuable to the 9/11 Commission, and in the legislation establishing it said it should take advantage of all those things, as we would hope that this commission would take advantage of some of the other oversight committees' work. So let's just hope that we can have the clarity of a bipartisan commission with high-level national leaders on it, as the committee calls for, with expertise in the areas that are important, whether it's law enforcement, security, civil liberties, civil rights, privacy, different range. Read it. Well, it's in the bill. It's online. So let's just go that route. It's the preferable route to go. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? So. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick follow-up on that, but how long are you willing to wait when Democrats seem to have a real fear that what happened on January 6th could occur again? So how long are you willing to wait before Democrats decide to just go at this on their own?
Well, we want, again, these things take a little longer time than those who want immediate gratification on an answer on something. We passed it yesterday. What is your answer today? It takes time for issues to be socialized, bills to be reviewed, and the rest. So, again, we want to bring it to the floor when it is ready. I mean, for them to bring it to the floor when it is ready. They may have some modifications in it, which we'll see what they are. Again, this is about prioritizing, sequencing, honoring the report of General Honore and the inspectors general about what needs to be done. But I would like to have the trust that the Senate wants to find the truth as well. And let's just give them a chance to do that without hanging something over them about a timetable or other options that exist for the Speaker of the House.
Just follow up really quickly about police reform. We're approaching that May 25th deadline of the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. Right now, Democrats and Republicans have said that it doesn't seem like they would reach a deal. I mean, what does that say about?
I don't think they've said they're not going to reach a deal.
We've heard from Senator Cory Booker, who has said that it's unlikely right now that it looks like they'll reach a deal by May 25th.
Oh, by May 25th. So that's a different story. I'm not a timetable person. Those of you who may, I'm not a timetable person. I don't want to, shall we say, empower those who are opposed to it to say, well, they didn't do it by the date. No, to do it when you're ready, and it will be in a reasonable amount of time. The hope would have been that we could have done it by his birthday, but you can't do it until it's ready in the best possible way, and that is more valuable than having it a couple of weeks early or whatever. So I think I have great confidence in Karen Bass. I think that with all due respect to your question, it's unimportant in terms of the fact that it will happen is what is important. We would have liked to happen at a certain time. It's a legislative process. We're operating under circumstances that are unusual with people not here. Karen Bass says she will stay next week to hopefully complete, but to continue the negotiations. I have a great deal of respect for how this is being handled in a bipartisan way. We're very proud of Karen Bass for what she has done. And again, this is not just about us. The maneuvering internally and inside is very important. But as I say about every bill, inside maneuvering can only get you so far. The outside mobilization is what makes all the difference. And the outside mobilization we saw more than 1 year ago, after May 25th, was something that we'd never seen before. Across the world, people in the streets for days, if not weeks, millions of people speaking out against what happened to George Floyd. So there's opportunity. We'll have legislation. I don't think we should bemoan the fact of what day it is, as long as it is imminent and soon, and I think it will be. Thank you all very much.
103-100.
Yeah, sad. Stay up so late. But we're still in the mix. We have the big Grizzlies game. That's a bigger part of the game last year.
That was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi at her weekly press conference, speaking a day after the House passed a bill to establish a bipartisan commission to investigate the January 6th siege on the Capitol. That bill now has to be voted on by the Senate. Again, I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. We also have ABC News Deputy Political Director Avery Harper with us now to break this all down. Avery, Pelosi covered a lot in this press conference, particularly in the Q&A. So let's start first with this commission now voted on by the House to investigate the Capitol siege on January 6th. She mentioned a few different aspects of what they're hoping this bill will do, not only to investigate what happened on January 6th, but she mentioned things like hardening the Capitol and providing more mental health resources for law enforcement after events like this. Touch on what are some of the things the House is hoping to do with this, and how likely is this to get past the Senate?
Oh, right. Well, listen, this is all about finding the truth and investigating what happened on January 6th, but also, making moves to ensure that this sort of thing cannot happen again and helping those who have been impacted, by the events of January 6th. We all saw those images in that video. It was chaos. It was a terror attack on our Capitol, on the seat of democracy. And so, we saw yesterday, the House vote, 35 Republicans voting with Democrats, but 175 Republicans did not. And sometimes I feel like I sound like a broken record, but this really does illustrate the grip that Donald Trump continues to have on the Republican Party. Republicans, they're looking at this commission, and we know that McConnell does not support it. And so the likelihood of Democrats getting 10 Republicans in the Senate to go along with them is slim. But the fact is that there were Republican lawmakers who participated in election lies following the election. There were Republican lawmakers who were involved in the rally that became the Stop the Steal rally that became the attack on the Capitol. So there is an awareness that this would not reflect well on the party. And so, we are seeing Republicans do their best to try and figure out how to ensure that an investigation does not happen, how it doesn't reflect poorly on the party. But the fact is that Nancy Pelosi has many cards in her deck to play, and there will be some sort of investigation of some sort of probe into what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, Pelosi was asked about what that vote says about the party. It was interesting to hear her complimenting the Republican Party from a general standpoint, not something we often hear from her. But she said that this is a different breed of Republican Party and was urging those Republicans who did vote for the panel to, quote, take back your party. Do you think that message will get across at all?
I'm not sure that is going to fall on the deaf ears of Republican lawmakers who are really entrenched in this new Republican Party that is completely aligned with former President Trump. We did see Pelosi talk about those who broke party ranks to vote with Republicans in search of the truth for what happened, on January 6th. She called on those other Republicans to be courageous, to take the party back, to try and figure out, in the search for truth after January 6th. But the likelihood of that happening in the Senate is slim because, again, Republicans tend to be unified on these sorts of things. And we know that McConnell is not in support of this commission, so we'll have to see what happens.
And then she also talked about the infrastructure bill and the human infrastructure bill, using the terms used by President Biden. What are the status of those bills and those negotiations right now?
Well, listen, negotiations still have quite a while to go before, any sort of bill makes it back to the president's desk. We know that the president has been open. He has signaled that he is open to negotiating the size and the scope of the infrastructure bill. But still, Republicans have a much narrower understanding and a more narrow interpretation of what infrastructure is than Democrats. Democrats want to see a more robust bill that gets at what we would normally consider social issues, things like paid family leave, like education, like health care. And so there's still a while to go.
And then finally, she addressed the George Floyd bill. It's in the works in Congress. They were hoping to get it passed by next week, I think. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Pelosi didn't sound too happy to be asked about the date and whether or not they will make that kind of artificial deadline. But where does it stand, particularly on some of the sticking points of this bill, which is looking to overhaul policing nationwide?
Right. They had this deadline that was really put forth by President Biden during his address to the joint session of Congress to try and pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act by May 25th, the anniversary of George Floyd's killing. The fact is that there are still negotiations going on. They're very delicate. We know that they're not necessarily going all that well, especially on one of the sticking points, which is qualified immunity, which is about lowering the standards so that officers could be prosecuted civilly in incidents like the one that we saw with George Floyd. And that's something that Republicans just have not been willing to get on board with. And so we know that Karen Bass is one of the folks who is heading up the negotiations and continuing those negotiations. But right now, that legislation is stalled.
All right, ABC News Deputy Political Director Avery Harper. Avery, thank you. Welcome back. After 14 years, Emmy Award-winning Pose star Billy Porter is breaking his silence on being HIV positive. This is what HIV positive looks like now, Porter says, revealing he was diagnosed in 2007, but hid his condition from his castmates and even his mother. Now in a new Hollywood Reporter article, Porter is telling his story. Here's Gio Benitez with more.
After 14 years, Billy Porter, star of the hit FX series Pose and award-winning Broadway star, now breaking his silence about something he kept hidden for so long.
February of 2007, I was diagnosed diabetic, type 2 hereditary. March, I was signing bankruptcy papers, and by June, I was HIV positive.
Billy telling The Hollywood Reporter that shame was his silencer, keeping the secret from his beloved mother.
The category is...
Then came Pose and the iconic character of Pray Tell. He used Pray Tell as a proxy, speaking about it on GMA.
I am old enough to have lived through the AIDS crisis, and, I always thought in a survivor's guilt kind of way, like, why did I survive? Why? And when Pose came around and the character of Pray Tell presented itself in my life, I understood why.
After shooting the final episode of Pose, he had a change of heart and called his mom.
I ripped the Band-Aid off and I just told her, and she said, I love you. I've always loved you. That will never change.
Billy's story is another example that the stigma is still very much alive.
Someone who was playing someone living with HIV on Pose still felt so ashamed that they could not share their diagnosis.
Support poured in immediately, GLAAD saying in a statement, it's time to end the stigma that people living with HIV face and to educate each other about HIV prevention and treatment.
It's a pill a day for most people who are living with HIV. It's similar to, in terms of management, to diabetes, to high blood pressure.
Now, Billy says, he's ready to move forward.
It's time to look at some stuff so that I can grow up and move on and tell a different story.
And the Department of Health and Human Services says 1.2 million Americans are living with HIV today, but 1 in 7 don't know it. So testing is critical. Our thanks to Gio Benitez for that report. And as you can see, joining us for more on this is ABC News contributor LZ Granderson. LZ, thanks for being here. First of all, what do you think the significance is of Porter opening up about this now?
This is huge. This is really huge. And let me explain why. We all know now with the treatment of HIV that getting that diagnosis is no longer necessarily a death sentence. But it takes a certain amount of courage in order to go out and get the treatment that you need so that you can have a longer life. And it also takes a certain amount of courage to be tested so you can be aware of your status. By Billy being willing to reintroduce this conversation on the national level, what he's doing for Black people in particular is reminding us of the importance of taking care of ourselves. Right now, African Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population, but 45 to 46% of new HIV diagnoses were Black people. 46% in 2018. And on top of that, nearly 60% of that number were Black women. In my community, in the Black community, we don't like to talk about our personal business. But Billy is reminding us the importance of talking about that personal business, because while HIV/AIDS isn't killing the way that it was when we first were introduced to this awful disease, this awful virus, it's still killing Black people in particular at a disproportionate rate. And the first step towards addressing it is acknowledging it and talking about it. So I applaud Billy for helping to open this conversation.
And LZ, he says that he waited 14 years to reveal this because he was filled with shame. He says, I didn't want to have to live through the I told you so's from the religious community. He was concerned about his mother, too. So what stigmas do HIV positive people face today that some of us might not realize?
In my reporting, I can tell you that shame is a huge factor. As Billy talked about, the I told you so's. When a LGBTQ person comes out, particularly in the 80s and 90s and even into the 2000s, the assumption was if you were male that you would die of AIDS. And so no one wanted to share that with people who had said those words to them because the I told you so's would follow. But then there's also just a concern about whether or not you would get the looks from your friends. Remember, the stigma that we're talking about isn't just a stigma that's brought on by heterosexual people. There's also people within the community who also look at people who are positive with a different lens and treat them in a different way. And no one wants to be out, treated less than in any circumstance. And so, yeah, the stigma is there, but it's coming from all sorts of different directions. What we need to do, both as a community, LGBTQ people, but as well as the world as a whole, is to work hard to fight back against that stigma, because really HIV could be eliminated based upon the treatments that we have available to us now, if more people were to do things like get tested, continue practicing safer sex, and looking into taking PrEP, which is a medication that helps prevent the contraction of HIV/AIDS and the spread of HIV.
What do you think this does for Porter himself, to finally have this out there and to not have to hold on to this secret anymore?
It's really amazing, because when you see Billy and his incredible talent, his beauty, his courage, how bold he is in his sexuality, his willingness to push the envelope with his outfits, on the red carpets, it was hard to imagine him living with shame. But this is just a reminder that you just never know what someone is going through in private, and not to conflate a public persona with private struggles or private victories. So I'm really happy for Billy, that he's a little bit freer, that he has a lot more peace, and perhaps more importantly, that he's turned the page on that shame, because shame does so many damaging things beyond just preventing us from doing what's best for us. It actually stays inside and eats away at us even more than the demons that we're trying to hide.
And LZ, what does this do for all the other people out there living with HIV?
Just a reminder that you can live a full life, a full, healthy, adventurous life. As I said earlier, a positive diagnosis is no longer the death sentence that it once was. It's no longer meaning that you're going to necessarily lose, employment, that you can still have a full, big life. And it's really hard to imagine anyone in Hollywood, anyway, living a bigger, fuller life than Billy Porter since Pose premiered.
That's for sure. LZ Granderson, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And that does it for this ABC News Live update. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran for The Breakdown. Stay safe. Have a great day.